So how to let go of your attachments? Or when you hear in Buddhism, or people
Letting
in
go.
Buddhist circles, let go. What do you, well, let go of what?
When people say, how do I let go? When do they ask that question? Do they ask that question when they're at the peak of their happiness? And when the life is good, do they ask how to let go of this?
Mm-hmm.
No. So the question is always asked when there's something bothering you.
When you're overwhelmed.
When you're overwhelmed, yeah. When something's not going away. When you can't help but keep revolving around something that's unpleasant. So then, I want to let go. So you let go by recognizing that you are suffering now because you haven't let go before. So the experience of discomfort, displeasure, loss of the loved ones or something like that you can't let go of now. So the suffering of that is because you haven't let go before. And that's why I always say, you have to stop trying to get rid of that suffering, because that's not what letting go means. Letting go means really developing wisdom in regard to the nature of not being able to hold things in the first place. See, because if you were truly holding the dear one or something, they would have not passed. They would have not changed. You would have not been experiencing suffering. You would have been in control. But people don't see that when things are good, because they don't look for it. They don't look for the recognition that things are not in your control even when they are good. Because if you were to not forget that things are not in your control, you wouldn't need to let go as much. Because when things change against your will or the way you don't want them to be, well, you are already implicitly aware that they were never in your control to begin with. So see, you already let it go to that extent. But it's when people don't want to see that when things are good, when things are happy, when things are bright, they fully develop a belief that they are in control of what they own, what they possess, who they love, who they're with. But then things change, as you know they will, but you were ignoring that they will. And now you want to let go. But really now you just want to not suffer the consequences of pain as a result of you holding things blindly. So it's not a question to never engage with the world because things will change. It's just to never lose perspective in regard to that which is subject to change, which is everything around you, including yourself. So that's what I mean. Letting go, it's not something you do. Letting go is understanding that you could not have held things in the first place. Don't just reflect on things we say about letting go when there is discomfort and when there is pain or there is reminder of it, but do it at the peak of your happiness, as I say. When everything is fine, everything is going your way, be aware that it could have not been that way, and it won't be that way always. So that's slight kind of uneasiness in regard to it, but that uneasiness is the gateway to that right perspective of recognizing the true meaning of anicca that the Buddha talked about. Anicca means subject to change. Doesn't mean changing all the time. It means subject to change. That's against your will, outside of your scope of your control. You are subject to it as well. So understanding anicca, understanding being subject to change, means letting go. Means preventing yourself from holding blindly. And that's already what letting go is. But yeah, often just let go. Just letting go is not a matter of choice. Even holding is not a matter of choice. It's basically the result of whether you have perspective in regard to what is subject to change, or you're ignoring that is subject to change. So if you're ignoring that things are subject to change, that things are not in your control fundamentally, you're holding. Even if you don't think, I will hold this dearly, you are already making this dear to you and you're holding it blindly. Mm-hmm. If you're not ignoring that things are subject to change, so you're consciously making effort. Oh, look, this is my dog, my pet, I had it my whole life. I didn't, I'm just giving an example. It's like, yeah, his life can end, my life can end. That's the most natural thing. But I don't want to think about it only when it happens. And now pretend that it will never happen and just, let's talk about something else. It means I am ignoring the basic, crude, obvious reality of things being subject to change that is against my will. And because of that, I'm holding on to him. Not because I look after him, because I feed him, I must be attached. No. But if I don't have perspective in him being subject to change, me being subject to change, that's how I'm holding. Even if I don't feed him, even if I don't pet him, I am actually attached to him. In other words, because I don't have perspective. The same, family members, whatever, possessions, wealth, same, health, things you take for granted. You take for granted by ignoring that these things are subject to change, because it's kind of disconcerting to think about it. So you think you can avoid it by ignoring it, but then you pay the price when things do change and you're affected, and then you want to let go. But that's just the result of everything else you've been holding wrongly before. So how do I let go then? Should really reformulate it as like, how do I not lose perspective in regard to that which is subject to change, things around me, people, pets, anything that's dear to me, my ownership, my possessions. How do I not lose perspective? Well, by making effort to think about these things rightly. Even, set a time of day, like half an hour, and just contemplate how things are subject to change. And if you feel anxious, allow that feeling to manifest, because that is the feeling of the world that you're in.
That's the feeling of recognition.
Well, that's exactly, recognizing the true nature of things. It's not going to be pleasant initially to the mind that up to that point has been making all the effort to ignore the nature of change and so on. So if somebody is asking the question how to let go, means at least to that extent they have some sort of recognition of their responsibility in their own suffering. So how do I let go so I don't suffer? So it's a good thing, but it's far from being sufficient. How do I let go? Well, this is how you let go. Okay, now I let go and now I'm fine. Suffering you're experiencing on account of not letting go is the result. It's kind of the symptom of an underlying problem that you've been ignoring, which is things are subject to change and you don't want to admit that to yourself because it's unpleasantly felt. As simple as that. So you let go by admitting these things to yourself, by contemplating them, and by enduring the unpleasantness of it when it arises. Because actually you realize you have a choice now. Either you're going to endure those kind of mild anxieties and concern on account of, things could change and I will not ignore this, or you're going to pretend it's not there and then be completely crushed when things do change against your will. And then, how do I let go? Lose your mind with grief and so on. So don't wait for that to prompt you to think about letting go.
Yeah, that's so that detachment and that ease that it comes from understanding that things are subject to change. So that will come from it. You don't have to. Exactly, you don't have to do it. It's like, this is how do I become detached? You become detached by seeing that you could not have been attached to it in the first place, not the way you believed it. Mm-hmm. And the only way to see that, it's not like I just make a decision I'm not attached, is to contemplate that which will prevent you to be attached the way you are. Like you cannot be attached to your pet or a loved one or possessions if you don't forget that it can be taken away at any given second. So it doesn't matter what you do, this is the ultimate context. It's subject to change, it's against my will. That's truly anicca. That's what people, when they heard Buddha talk about anicca, they were often shocked and scared initially. And then those who were had enough composure saw, this is worth developing towards. That's the true freedom then. Developing your mind in regard to things that are subject to change. So if you do make the effort and sustain the perspective that my dear pet can be taken away at any given time. That perspective will prevent you to become blindly, carelessly, obliviously attached to it. And when it does leave.
And when it does leave, or when you leave, or when something happens, there will not be as much of a shock to the system that it's experiencing. Yeah, because it is truly out of your hands. So the grief will be seriously dampened. And obviously, if you've truly developed understanding of anicca, there will be no grief. But I'm talking more like for people, who are not monks and so on, committed to this practice 24/7. It's still a useful thing. Being aware of the fact that things are subject to change, it's a quite a useful superpower even in life that you can develop. It keeps you more resilient, more patient, more stable, more basically impermeable to because sometimes things might change quickly. It's one and then the other one and then the other one. Oh, unpleasant, and you will still be able to sustain some sort of composure in regard to it, which most people wouldn't. Which means your well-being, your contentment will be less affected, even as a layperson. So it's always useful to have that authentic recognition of, things are subject to change. But it needs to be also done on that personal level, especially when it comes to the Buddhist practice. People hear Nietzsche and it's often just taken in this abstract sense. Yes, everything is subject to change. Modern science have shown everything is constantly changing, and people think about Nietzsche in those completely impersonal terms. That's not Nietzsche. Nietzsche is finding that which is dear to you and contemplating that to be subject to change, and see how indifferent you're going to stay if you start thinking that. And that's then you realize, if I work through this, that's where the freedom is. That's truly then how you will not suffer, even with your dearest, family members, pets, friends, whatever, change or die, or inevitably things will happen. Your mind will not, doesn't mean you will not perceive what has happened or know the significance of it. Just means you will not be as affected by it because you never really lost perspective in regard to that which is inevitable. Sickness, old age and death, one way or the other. Quickly or slow, doesn't matter. It's inevitable.